Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm a little neurotic about my sleep. And we all know in order to feel our best, build muscle, lose body fat, sleep is a big part of it. When I started incorporating cured nightcaps as part of my wind down routine, it truly changed the game in terms of having a good night's quality sleep and waking up feeling refreshed. The thing that makes the nightcap stand out isn't the already properly dosed CBD to help with general aches, discomfort, and mood, but it's the added CBN that takes this product to the next level. CBN supports your body's natural sleep rhythms throughout the night for deep restorative sleep that leaves you feeling ready to take on anything the next day. No grogginess or harsh side effects. I like to take these nightcaps with me when I'm traveling or if I'm experiencing higher stress than normal. Pairing the nightcaps with either Zen or a few drops of one of their CBD oils really hits the spot. Making sure to check out all of Cured's amazing products online. Use the code, all one word, for a discount at checkout.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Welcome back to the Pro Physique Code. We are going to do a couple things today. First, we're going to talk about previewing the big show this weekend. Huge lineup, but the topic for today is going to be boundaries in prep, setting boundaries with significant others, family members, friends, the guy who makes your food at the deli, whatever, anybody that you got to set some boundaries with. We'll talk about that in prep. And maybe with social media, setting boundaries with social media, right? Like there's a lot to consider when it comes to like how we handle prep. And we got IFBB Pro Evan Wells with us. How you doing, Evan?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Shoulders are looking juicy as always.
Trying to.
All right.
Trying to get a little wider.
I'm gonna see
and
you.
do they not look super
That's
capped, you know?
Are you coming to Girl Power?
Yes.
You'll be in town for that? Okay, cool. And
absolutely.
Then let's see. NPC nationally qualified bikini competitor, Alexis Maitland. Does anyone know that's her actual name?
Alexa.
Yeah. You know, it's actually funny. Oh my gosh, I won't. The client who, so funny story on Alexa. So yesterday, one of my clients accidentally texted me as if like she was talking to Alexa, and she meant to send a text to like the nanny or something, but the text came through to me and it was like, Alexa, da 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 da, and she was so embarrassed that she sent me that text. But I just thought it was funny because I'm like, well, actually, it works. My name is Alexa, so
it does.
Yeah. Well, if you say Alexa in my kitchen, the ring, it turns on. So every morning at 7 a.m. I get dinosaur facts because one of my sons made that a thing. So I just
that's funny.
Yeah. And every now and then we'll just be in the kitchen, like no one will say a sound and it'll just turn on and start talking. And I'm like, what is that thing doing? Yeah. So
really? Yeah. It's
I've noticed that
I get
at your
the
house.
Alexa jokes every once in a while, but yeah, I was one time I was went into a doctor's appointment and I remember it was my first time there and I go in to check in at the desk and they're like, is your name, or they're like, you know, confirm like what's your name, and I said it and then they whispered it back to me and I'm like thinking it was like, I'm thinking they're trying to be confidential, but I'm like, I don't care, you can say my name. But then I realized they didn't want to say my name out loud because they had an Alexa and it would like trigger it in the background.
Yeah, I wonder if that's creating an uproar in the community of Alexas. Like Siri,
Totally.
That's not really someone's name that I'm aware of. I've never, maybe in some other countries, but Alexa's not that uncommon.
Only in The Witcher.
I know. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about, so we have one pro bikini show this weekend in the States. And what tends to happen is, you know, last week we had a couple different shows and it splits the crowd up a little bit. Whereas now you've got competitors from Canada, you've got competitors from Europe, you've got competitors from Brazil, and a whole host of competitors from the United States. I think it's 35 total open.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a big show. And some of these names on the list too, there's a couple of names that, we can go into, but like some people haven't competed in a while.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm really, really excited to see Casey Samsel. She's going to be back on stage, and she hasn't competed in like, I don't know, a couple of years, but she always used to kind of be a top competitor. So it'll be interesting to
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really excited. You're going, right, Paul? You're going to be there in
Yep.
person?
Yep. I'll be
Okay.
there in person. This is, I talk about it all the time, but Salt Lake City, this is one of my favorite trips. It's just the city is so good for traveling to for a bodybuilding show. It's just easy. The airport is literally like 5-minute car ride from the airport, so that's a big deal. When you fly into a city and the Uber's like 40-50 bucks, you're like, ugh, do I get a rental
Yeah.
car? It's literally like $8 to get to the downtown. And then the downtown is completely walkable. You can walk from your Airbnbs to the restaurants to the venue. It's like the weather there is amazing because you're in the basin of the mountains. So it's like maybe 50-60 degrees and sunny. It's just, yeah, I gush all the time about Salt Lake City. I just really enjoy it. So I can't wait. But every year this is an interesting show, because it brings out some rock stars. Historically speaking, was it last year or 2 years ago that it was Ashley Kaltwasser versus India Paulino? Like,
Mhm.
I think last year it was Amy Delgado again. Like, she was in the show. So it brings out rock stars, like Robin Mayer, who is the promoter, does a wonderful job. She's
I didn't know
created
it was Robin show.
yeah,
I
she's
don't know
created a
that.
signature event. She gives out the Thor hammers.
Yep.
She has the donut wall for all the competitors. They have a wall like with pegs full of donuts.
Oh, I always see that. Was it you last year, Paul? You took a picture in front of that with like your girls or something
I think
like
it was
that.
two
I've always
years
seen the
two
donut
years
wall.
ago with Lana. Yeah, maybe
Yes.
last year too. But yeah, the years are starting to stack up.
I can't believe I didn't know that was Robin's show. She's always been so sweet to me. I can't believe
Yeah,
I didn't know that was her show.
yeah. It used to be called like the Salt Lake City show or whatever, and then she got the Wasatch name, and that's kind of stood out now.
Yeah.
But it's actually, it's not just bikini. It's got pro figure, pro men's physique. So backstage, it is stacked. Like, there are a lot of people back there. So the pro bikini, I think, the pros start at, it's either 11 or 12. And so bikinis last, so they're not going to be on right away. It's going to be an hour and a half with all the men's physique and all the figure that go for prejudging. And then you've got masters bikini. I've got Carrie Gallick doing the masters. She's a fantastic competitor. So I'm going to be locked in for that. But so the open competitors are going to not be on stage till Utah time, like maybe 1-2 o'clock, something like that. Depends on when
All
they start
right.
that. But they also get a good turnout for their NPC show. It's just a great show overall.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
excited.
Well,
But let's
I'm
go through this
excited.
list. 5
Yeah.
Olympians, 5 prior Olympians. And I think a bunch of girls in here who are, Olympia capable.
Absolutely. I think we should start with she's fresh on my mind because you just posted about her, but Brittany Hamilton. I am really excited to see her on stage. She is looking amazing. And she took all last year off, correct?
So she did the Charlotte show and she did Pittsburgh last year, but her mindset was not there. Like, we did the shows,
Okay.
she was not ready for the grind. And honestly, the feedback was she needed more muscle, which sounds weird when you look at Brittany Hamilton to say that. But if you look at the post I made today, the amount of muscle she's added to her legs to match her shoulders and glutes has created the balance. And we got really good feedback from Sandy when she came up to Orlando. And Sandy said she's really created a nice hourglass shape, really nice flow. And that's what she needed to do. She's also kind of changed her posing just a touch, so her waist looks really sharp. Like,
I was gonna say
I think
her waist is
sometimes as a
way
pro,
tighter.
yeah, as a pro competitor, you just kind of get stuck in a rut. You're always doing the same things. And, a couple times we've met, I said, hey, move your arm here, do this. And so she's tinkered. And now it just looks like a different person. I posted her last year picture to this year.
Yeah, yeah. And how tall is she? She's a little taller, isn't she?
She's 5'7", 5'8".
Yeah,
She's tall.
she's taller.
She's a little taller, so she,
yeah,
just has more space she has to fill out.
She's about as tall as you can get before it starts to look lanky, right? Like, you know,
Yeah.
she's the right height for bikini tall. You don't, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really excited for her this weekend. She's definitely going to be one to watch.
Yeah,
This is
she'll
gonna
be
be
right
good.
in it. I mean, there's a bunch of girls on this. Obviously, everyone's looking at Amy. She's the
Yes,
incumbent. She
yeah.
won it last year. She just won in San Diego. She got second at the Arnold. I don't understand why she's still competing, but again, that's not my prerogative to understand that. But she's got nothing to gain from this. I mean, obviously, maybe she'll make a couple bucks, but um, yeah. But I'm assuming she's probably just trying to stay locked in because she's doing Pittsburgh or New York or both. So
Yeah, I think that, and I know I want to say I've seen her kind of post about like how I think she just wants to defend that title. I don't know. I'm
yeah,
sure that a
yeah.
little bit of that goes
Again,
into it. So
it's just a difference of kind of like mindset. I haven't had a competitor at her level compete as frequently as she had. So, you know, maybe someday I'll have that. But my girls tend to like, you know, compete and then shut it down once they get qualified or work on that next goal. But, you know, defending
Mhm.
titles, obviously that's really fun too. So she'll obviously be the one to beat. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think there's any question there. Um,
Mhm.
there's some sleepers in here. So you guys tell me the names that you see, and I'm going to tell you probably a name that you don't see coming.
Well, I see Malu's name on there, and she kind of pops out to me. Has she been? I don't think she's been Olympia qualified before, but she's gotten really
Not,
close. I know.
you got a lot of seconds last year, like a lot of
Yeah,
seconds
so
and thirds. She was right there, and she shut it down right when I felt like she was about to get qualified last year. I think she got like second or third at Sasquatch, and I expected to see her at like a Daytona, and she was not there. So,
Mhm.
you know, I think she just decided, okay, let me make the improvements and come back. Now, let me tell you something. If she's made improvements, watch out. That girl's got striking shape, balance, muscularity, and she's with Kim, and Kim's obviously having a heck of a year already. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
yeah. Well, I mean, I know we talked a little bit about this prior to coming on, but Casey Samsel it'll just be very interesting to see where she falls in the lineup too, because she was one of those, top pros several years ago. So it's like, I feel like it's a similar concept with like Angelica, how she took a couple years away and came back. And it'll be interesting to see kind of where Casey fits in the lineup now a couple years later.
yeah. Casey got as high as fourth at the Olympia. People don't remember that. It was 2019 or 2018. She was fourth at the Olympia, and then I think third at the Arnold the following year. So she was on that rise, and then she's kind of been, you know, I'll say this, when she does pop in, she wins a lot. She's
Mhm.
got a lot of pro wins. She's got that hourglass look that they're looking for in the pro league right now. Like, she's very dangerous if she's, you know, fitting the criteria. She's just got that presence. I think, you know, I was excited to see her on this list because she's very tall. And so what you worry
Mhm.
about with a lineup with a Brittany who's tall and muscular is, okay, are there going to be other tall and muscular girls? I also saw Kimber Bonilla on here. She's very tall.
Yeah.
So I think
Mhm.
that's, you know, that's another good person for Brittany to, like, you know, stand next to. The last thing you want is a bunch of like Amy's, Darajas, Maria Acosta, a
Right.
bunch of like smaller stature, and you're like the you know, not that that's a bad thing, but you know, it's going to be interesting to see how these girls look all compared to each other. That's the cool thing about bikini. They're all so different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And then another. Don't quote me, but I want to say she's taller as Alyssa Blessing. I know I want to say she got third at San Diego a couple weeks ago, and
Really?
she's on
Okay.
this list.
Yeah. I know she's a
Yeah,
taller
she got
competitor.
third, third or fourth, I think, at San Diego. I do remember that. So
Okay. And
so
I saw
yeah,
Noelle
yeah,
Zayour was in that first call out at San Diego. Now
yes,
she's
yes.
tiny. She might, I mean, don't quote me, but she might be 5 foot. Like, she's a tiny one. A lot of muscle, a
I
lot of
think you're
shape.
right on that.
Really, really striking, you know, competitor. Um, so she could compare well with Amy, right? So you wonder, you know, when they get in their groups, because, you know, if you look at this list, they usually do groups of 6 or 7. The Wasatch stage is not very big, so you can see who's going to be next to who in groups, right? Um, and
Yeah, and
the
Maya Astabi's on this
yep,
list as well. I think she's
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 a
a little shorter as well.
Olympian. Yeah, she's an Olympian, perennial first call outer. You know, she's one that's like, on any given day it can be her day. A lot of muscle, very like striking,
Yeah.
beautiful girl. So like, a lot of potential there with her for like moving up to, and that's what's interesting about the pro bikini division is like, they walk out on that stage on any given day, whoever's on is going to get a real look. The name that probably none of you guys are familiar with that I'm very familiar with is Chantel Hall. So she'll be coming out right next to Brittany, about the same height as
Okay.
Brittany, beautiful lines, lots of muscle, just she beat, so the reason I know that name is she beat Lana 2 years ago. She popped into a show out in California, and after prejudging, Lana's like, oh, it's looking like third. I'm like, third? Who's got second? And she's like, Chantel Hall. And I went and looked at it. I was like, oh, damn. So, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not familiar
Interesting.
with her.
I'm not either, but I'm gonna have to look her up. I mean, we may know her after this weekend, so
Yeah, she was at the
okay,
Phoenix Pro last year. She was at Nashville Fit Show last year. She didn't quite put it together last year, but if she's on, who else is in here that I'm and
I know like
guys,
Jessica Miller, Allison Tetsu, obviously those two.
yeah, I just saw Allison in the UK. She was in that show
Mhm.
and she did not make the top 5.
Yeah.
So I don't expect her, because this lineup is really deep, right? I don't expect her to be in that top 6 or 8 call out. I could be wrong. She's got, a very unique, striking look too. But based on what I just saw over there, I wouldn't expect her. But it's been a couple weeks. Maybe she's made the adjustments. The sneaky one is Jessica Miller. Not a lot of people probably know that name. She's local to us. But when that girl puts it all together, she could go to the Olympia. She's got the muscle. She's got the shape.
Gobs of
She's got
muscle, gobs of shape. Yeah.
I've just never seen her put it all together on the stage.
Yeah. I actually, and I know this doesn't speak a ton of volumes, but I just saw an update from Casey Samsel on Instagram, like a posing video. And she looked, I mean, I know obviously I have to take what you see on Instagram with a grain of salt, but she looks really, really good. Even from like the back, the glutes, her like, So I feel like the glutes in the past were kind of always her area where maybe she could have improved a little bit. But from what I see on Instagram right now, she looks really good. So it'll be exciting to see how she compares.
There is a lot of power in stepping back from competing, right? And I think sometimes we feel like these competitors have to keep going, but you don't get better in prep typically. There's very few competitors that are getting better over the course of a year if they're doing a lot of shows. So the fact that she took time off.
I think, I mean, I think like great examples like Lana and Ari, they were both, they did amazing, and they took like multiple years away from stage before coming and working with you, and then having great success from there. So it's a great point.
It's the fun thing about this sport is that, you can take time off, and if you come back and fit the criteria right away, no one saw it with Ari, and it could be the same thing with Casey this year. She could come out, walk out into those lights, and everyone's going to be like, damn, Casey. So she's got, like, I think we talked about it in the last podcast, not every girl has the potential to win a show just based on like genetics and structure and muscle insertions. They got potential to like work their way into first call-outs and stuff. Casey's someone that can absolutely walk into any show and win if she's fitting the criteria. So it'll be very, very interesting. Trying to think if there's anybody else on this list. And I hate to not say names, but I'm just not super familiar. I was there when Steph Warden turned pro. She's got a lot of muscle, like that's in great shape. If she comes in right. Yeah.
And shout out to your girl Ariel Johnson. I know this is her pro debut.
That name sounded familiar.
Pro debut. Yeah, Ariel is making her pro debut, and I'm really happy. She's up, I want to say 9 or 10 pounds from her pro.
I saw her post that.
Yeah, and she's striding a little bit, right? So we're basically, we can't get any leaner. She's starting to stride in the glutes and stuff. So we're obviously we're in peak week now, but we were able to like test our peaking, and new approach for her with like feeding her into the show, and she's doing great. And also Shanika Harmonson. So Shanika got first call outs at the Ben Weider. So I'm bringing her in super sharp, right? Because she's a smaller competitor, so, but as far as like balance and muscle insertions, she's as good as there is. It's just going to be, can she hang with the girls with more muscle? So, it's going to be a fun day. I'll be pretty nervous. I don't know if I'll be nervous. Yeah, I guess I probably will be.
You
Yeah.
get a little bit of that show day anxiety before prejudging. We know
Yeah,
how
I
you
mean,
are.
if I had to guess, even taking my coach's goggles off, I'd say Amy and Brittany are the two that are going to be like the most comparable.
hmm
But I'm telling you, Chantel, Casey, um,
Mhm.
I mean, even Noelle, like these girls, they make these little adjustments from show to show, and you go, okay, you look at them differently, and it's a fresh set of eyes. Malou, um, I was there when Stacey Correa turned pro. Not a lot of people know her. She's only done a couple shows since she turned pro, but she's got a lot of wow factor. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I look down this list and I just see these names and I'm like, man, there's just a lot of names that I'm familiar with. So it's why it's exciting. Sometimes as a fan, as a coach, once the show starts, you're just a fan. Like I don't have any
Mhm.
more impact on the show. I'm not one of those coaches that's in the audience, like pointing and no, like the work is done. If I have to tell you how to pose, I didn't do my job. So I just
Yep.
shut my mouth. Even Otavia, when she was on stage, she's like, Coach, I keep looking at you, but you have no expression. She was trying to get like assurance from me.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's because you
Yeah,
were doing everything perfect. You didn't need me. So
Yeah.
that's just
that's
I
funny.
think it's going to be Amy and Brittany. I think what's different, either height is different, but I think they compare well structurally based on their height.
yeah, and muscularity wise, I mean,
Yep.
Amy's
They
obviously very
both.
muscular for the division. Brittany's very muscular for the division. And so yeah, I think, I'm hoping that, obviously Brittany brings it and that's what they want that day. But, obviously Amy is one of the names in this sport that everyone knows,
Yeah.
and for very good reason. So at the end of the day, it's
Yeah.
just going to be fun to get Brittany back on stage at her all-time best. It's going to be really fun to get Ariel on stage for her pro debut. Shanique and I are just starting our season. We're really going to try to make some moves this year. And then I've got Carrie in the Masters, who's very good as well. So it's going to be a fun day, a fun show. Yeah, long day. 35 bikini pros. What you guys got to realize is like first they got to
And
come
that's
out
just
in
open.
groups. Yeah. Then they got to come out for their individuals. Then they got to do call outs. I mean, that's going to be a 45-minute to an hour, um, depending on how they
It's
do the
pretty,
call outs. Yeah.
Yeah.
pretty deep.
It's
It
going to be
reminds
probably
me
an
of,
hour from start to finish easily for bikini.
Mhm.
it kind of reminds me of last year. I want to say Sasquatch Pro had like it may have even had more bikini competitors than this, but I remember it was a really long show and just a lineup of open bikini.
Yeah. And that one had a time difference too. So I remember trying to watch the live stream because I had a couple girls in that show and it was like, holy cow, it's still not on yet. It's still not on yet. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 hours behind us. Yep.
Yeah. I'm wondering if
Cool.
there's going to be some names on this list that I just go, oh, I didn't really know who you were.
Oh, I'm sure. I feel like there's
Yeah.
always like one or two people that kind of creep up there and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
who's that?
I see this name, Huyen or high-end person. And I'm like, I'm thinking of like a crazy physique and I'm like, okay, is that who I think it is? So yeah, yeah,
Mm,
it's going to be very interesting. But we all know,
definitely.
Amy's going to be holding down center with somebody most likely.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
unless something goes wrong, she's going to be there.
she's too consistent. I've never seen her off ever. She's different shades of on, but there's not
She's
big
never
swings.
fully missed. No.
Yeah, no. So, all right. Well, let's talk about today's topic then, because maybe we can talk about setting boundaries with looking at these lists. Because Brittany Hamilton said she didn't sleep much last night when it came out.
That's a good one.
Yes. Yes, I think boundary setting and prep, boundary setting, communication. I don't feel like a lot of people like to talk about this, but it's definitely very important for your mental health and mental sanity if you want to have a successful prep to set boundaries. And it's only going to help you as an athlete.
Yeah, I think it's also self-awareness, because I think the first time you prep, you don't realize the psychological warfare that you're going into, the physical warfare that you're going into. And it's like that old saying about, boiling a frog, they don't jump out because the water just gets hotter and hotter. Well, it's the same thing with prep. You don't realize by the end of the prep how much you've changed. And if you're not being, open and communicating with those around you, setting boundaries, you can like wreck some relationships. You know, I've
Yep.
seen a lot of couples go through that. So there is a bit of understanding. Now, the more you prep, the more you know how to prep the people around you, right? So maybe
Yeah.
if you're new to competing, this can be a conversation you're going to have with anybody in your life. I think that could be helpful.
Absolutely. Like setting expectations, right? I think that's a big thing. And you don't, like I always say, is you don't know what you don't know. And as a newer competitor, you don't know what to expect with that. And that can be difficult, right? So that's a good conversation to have with your coach too, is say, hey, what can I expect throughout this prep? Obviously, I read things and I see things, but like, what do you think I can expect? I love when I get questions like that, because that way you have the opportunity to kind of explain things, right? Like how hunger works. Like, yes, there's going to be times that you get very, very hungry. There's going to be times you're like, why am I doing this? Don't react on those emotions. Know that those things fade. And everything is like a cycle. It's like weight loss. It doesn't just keep going straight down. It'll go up, it'll go down, it'll go up, it'll go down. But it's the average of everything we really want to take care of and look at. And that goes with the hunger, your stress, you're tired, your energy levels, all of that is going to be variable throughout the time. And take it day by day and just take it as a moment in time. And I think learning that is incredibly helpful, and being able to explain that to the people around you of, hey, I don't know if this is the way it's going to be, but this is kind of what I expect it to be like. And please be a
Yeah.
little bit patient with me throughout it.
So one
Yeah.
thing I've
I mean,
learned to do, go ahead, Lex.
oh, I was going to say, Evan, you nailed it when you said take it day by day. I think that that is the one thing I always tell my competitors. And that's the thing I always remind myself in prep, is especially when you get deep into prep, you're going to have days where you're like, I don't even know how I'm going to get through the day. I don't even know how I'm going to survive. Like it's one foot in front of the other. And, if you have the mindset and you think, oh, every day after that is going to be the equivalent to that day, or it's going to be worse, that it changes so drastically in prep. Like I don't know how to explain it, but some days you'll wake up and you'll feel awful, but the next day, literally you could feel the complete opposite and nothing
Mhm.
changed besides you just have a night of sleep under your belt, right? There are so many days in my prep where I've experienced that, and you don't know how to explain it, but you wake up the next day and you feel like a completely different person. So I feel like if that is one, like that's a very valuable lesson, especially if you've never prepped before. Know that things, emotions, the way you feel, it comes in waves, and you just really have to take it day by day.
Well, and not everybody has the luxury of prepping in solitude, right? And I think that's where maybe some people are even a little afraid of trying to do a bodybuilding show. But I've prepped without kids, and I've prepped with kids, and I've prepped without being married, and with being married, and without owning a business, and with owning a business. And I'll say this, honestly, the more I've had in my life, the better prep tends to go,
Yep.
because I have to be so regimented, but I'm also mentally busy where I don't have time to sit around and think about, am I hungry? So I've learned, and it could be just the experience of learning to enjoy the process more, but staying mentally active in prep just really just ensures that prep is going to go a lot more smoothly, because you're not hyper fixating on either hunger or fatigue. You just stay busy and you do what you got to do.
I can tell you this, my easiest
1000%
preps
true.
are ones that I was traveling, like, and I was spending 200 nights a year in a hotel room, and I had to make sure my food was packed. I had meetings all day. I didn't have time to think about if I was tired or hungry.
Yeah.
I had stuff I had to do.
Oh, and
Then the
that's my
times that I
favorite
started working from
feedback.
home, it's way harder.
My favorite feedback's from a client that's like, "Oh, I know we cut my carbs down to 70 this week, but I was so busy at work, I didn't even notice." And I'm like,
Good.
cool.
Yep. Yep. I always say the best prep hack is just staying busy, like keeping your mind occupied and busy. Because my hardest days in prep are always the ones where maybe I have a little extra time in the day where I get to sit there and I get to think about, how tired I am or how hungry I am. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's way harder than when you are go, go, go all day and you just don't even have time to sit down and think about being hungry or being tired.
Mhm.
So let's talk about, there's a couple of different ways you set boundaries. I think the most important is probably with the person you are either married to, live with, like your significant other. So let's talk, because you guys have had a couple different experiences with prep. Lexi, I don't believe you've been in a relationship in prep, but you've been in school. So we'll talk about maybe that a little bit. But Evan, you've been in a couple situations where you prepped in relationships. So talk to me about how you preface that in that situation.
The earlier on in my competing career, I remember I went through a prep, and that's, when I was with my ex-fiance, and who had obviously competed a lot, right? And way more than I had. And I remember her telling me after my first prep, she looked at me and said, "It can't be like this again." And that kind of really hit home for me. I didn't realize how selfish I was being with my emotions and understanding. Yes, I was tired. Yes, I was hungry. Yes, I was all that. But it was also a choice that I was making. And I was more of a victim mentality of like, oh, geez, I'm like, this is so hard for me, rather than understanding that people were in my life there to try to help me and support me and to understand that. So that really kind of hit home to me. Moving forward after that, obviously I did a lot of preps when we were together, and I tried my best to communicate that. Like if I was tired or something, saying, "Hey, like this has nothing to do with me and you. I am just exhausted," and kind of getting that across. I think that can help in relationships. Um, it's weirdly enough, I prefer it prepping when I'm in a relationship. I feel like that support is helpful, because I've always been in relationship with people that did support it too. So that's a little bit of a different situation with it. Um, but yeah, just the open communication and preferencing it, and being self-aware. Know when you're kind of being short, right? Like know when
Yep.
you're getting frustrated. We all know in our head, like, oh geez, like I'm just frustrated today. And then sitting down and thinking about that, why am I actually frustrated? And being self-aware. Not letting your emotions run you. If you let your emotions run you in a prep and you're in a relationship, you're going to end up in a bad spot. I coach, I can tell you this, and this goes for a lot of guy competitors. I coach a lot of females, but I also coach a fair amount of guys. And I can tell you, more issues in relationships come from the guy competitor side with it than the female competitor side. So you need to, as a guy, because I think a lot of times guys kind of hide their emotions on things. And in prep, when food gets low and you are tired, it's not as easy to manage that. Um, and I think being aware of that is important, because look, prep is cool, being in shape is cool, like goals are cool, but it's not worth blowing your relationship over. It's not. So be smart about that. But also be self-aware too. And if be self-aware in your actions. If people are saying, "Oh, you're being selfish, you're doing this," and you're just taking care of your business and you're being a nice person and you're communicating that, then that's not necessarily on you either. So it's going in with kind of open eyes. That'd be my suggestion.
What say you, Lexi?
So I always feel like, so I mean I've prepped in definitely a lot of different circumstances, my favorite being living alone. That's the easiest. But I prepped in a dorm room. I prepped when I had roommates in an apartment. I also had a part of a prep where I was living like at home after college, or after my first year of college. And typically the way I like to approach it is, I mean, I try to just I don't know if this is necessarily a good thing. I try to just hide like being in prep in the sense of I try not to act any differently than I normally would. Like when I lived at home, for part of my first prep, I mean, like my family didn't even know I was in prep for a while. I just kind of hid it and I tried to still be present for them when I was around them. But, I think when it comes down to it, what you said, Evan, before about being very self-aware, and we all have those days where you're just very irritable, you're maybe a little extra emotional, and somebody around you says something, and maybe it's not a bad comment, but they say something and it just like, it throws you off, and you start crying or you just get really upset. I think you have to have the self-awareness to sometimes pull yourself out of the situation. So like for me, if I know I'm in a very like emotional state or I'm just very irritable, usually I will, if I'm around somebody, I'll say, hey, like it's not you, it's me, and I just need to go and have some alone time right now so I can, just reset, before, I accidentally say something that I'm going to regret towards that person. Because, the way I look at it is, just because maybe we're suffering in prep or we're suffering on the given day, it doesn't mean that those around you have to suffer as well. So I think it's just a matter of being self-aware. And if you find, okay, yeah, you're just really irritable, you're really unlike yourself, remove yourself from the situation and don't be afraid to tell, either your significant other or your friend or your family member. Don't be afraid to, to tell them, hey, I'm really irritable right now. I'm just having a day. I need to just go and have some alone time and just reset and, get back to being my normal self. Don't be afraid to remove yourself from the situation, because that's a lot better than staying in the situation and saying something that you're going to regret, and they could potentially create a relationship turmoil.
Yeah, you bring
One
up a
thing,
good point about hiding prep. I think for me, that's probably what I'll do going forward, because I don't like the focus to be on me at any time. Sure, on the day I competed, I was like, cool, I like that I'm getting some attention today and it's about me, and you're damn right it better well be, because I'm competing. Um, but I mean, you guys knew I was prepping last year, but at no point did I make it a point to discuss it. And so that's another way competitors can actually kind of create a boundary, is like, there's no rule that states I prep, therefore I post about it, right? Daraja and I had this conversation early on in her career because, she got skyrocketed so fast to the top that she started to feel the pressure of everyone knowing what show she was doing all the time. And so I think it was the year we decided to do Tampa. She didn't say a word about it. She just wanted it to be like, okay, I'm going to prep. And when I get up, and she enjoyed the process that much more. She's now, come to enjoy both parts of it a little bit more, but there can be times where talking about it makes it more difficult. You start to feel the pressure. You start to, and what's funny is I think we start to think like, oh, if I don't win, my friends, my followers, my fans, whoever they are, they're going to be disappointed. No, they're not. No, they're not.
I think if anything, if you don't win, it sometimes, especially if you have a big social presence, I feel like sometimes it can, especially if you are the type of person that learns from it and doesn't, bash the other people that won. I think it makes you a little bit more relatable as a competitor, right? And a lot of times other people like following people who are relatable, right? It's cool to see people win, but it's cool when you can follow people who are maybe a little bit more relatable, because you feel like you can just relate to them a little bit more on a personal level.
I think one thing I want to bring up too about, especially like in relationships and communication and things like that with it, is understand if you're in a relationship or roommates or whoever it is, whoever's in your life in direct contact with you on a normal basis and lives with you in a prep situation, remember that you attract, what is it? I don't remember the term I'm trying to think of here, but the more pleasant you can make it around those people, the more likely they're going to be to support you in the future. So
Oh
just
yeah.
remember
You
that.
don't want to go
Don't,
through, I mean, because we get the opportunity to coach athletes that have worked with other coaches that have basically run them into the ground, created an environment where, like, although they competed, their people in their lives hated that they were competing because they just weren't themselves anymore. Whereas, one of my favorite, comments is when a husband or a brother or significant other of someone is like, man, I can't believe she's in prep. Like, she's a different person this year. Like, thank you so much for like making her enjoy
yeah.
the sport again. Um, so there can be that aspect too. And if you can prep in a manner that the people around you are kind of cheering you on versus like, oh crap, Lexi's gonna prep again. Like, that's not, so one of my non-negotiables for prep last year was I still did my date night every week with my wife. There's no reason that you can't go out to dinner once a week if you choose. I'm obviously not competing to win Mr. Olympia, so it's a sliding scale. I'm sure Chris Bumstead's not going out to dinner the week 2 weeks before the show, but for me it was more important that I be able to do that and fit that in, because it's very easy to get tunnel vision at the end of prep and not realize for 6-8 weeks you've just completely shut everyone out of your life. The prep is over and now you're like, oh crap, I got some work to do, versus just easily transitioning out of prep, and it's not such a big deal because you've kind of kept your same routines. And that's very much a learned behavior. I did not
Mhm.
do that early on in my competing career.
And a
And
lot of
there's
times
a
it's
lot.
hard early in the competing career too. It is harder to do that. That's I feel like is something that's way easier after you've done like a show or two and you kind of realize things because a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves with their first shows, right? Because it's the first time they've really committed, really stuck to something, and they have these expectations they put on themselves with it, which is good. Like you want to put those expectations on yourself because if you don't, you're not going to stick to what you need to stick to with that. But again, Just like anything in life, prepping, knowing how to prep is a skill. Coaching's a skill, anything's a skill, and knowing how to handle a prep is also a learned skill. Very few people can just handle it the first time around.
Yeah, you don't want to major in the
Absolutely.
minors. And I think what I learned about those early preps was I was so concerned about controlling certain variables that literally had zero outcome.
Mhm.
They were, I was worried about things that I thought were important that I looked back and went, why did I care about that? Right. And so you learn to just kind of take a step back. I mean, almost look back and laugh at yourself and go,
Mhm.
what are you doing, fool? And then there's, it, and again, it is a personality thing. There are certain things that certain people just feel more comfortable controlling, more variables, certain type A people. I know, Lexi, like you, there's not a big shift in your lifestyle in or out of prep. It's not like you become a completely different person. I tend to be a little bit more like, I'm going to have some tequila and I'm definitely going to overeat a little bit every now and then. I feel like you are very consistent.
I try, and I think that's part of why I can sometimes get away with like hiding prep. Not that I have a reason to need to hide prep, but like sometimes I don't need to, I don't need to explain to my distant relatives, that I'm in prep, because it's just going to bring about a ton of questions I don't want, right? So I just don't say anything, and they just know like this is the lifestyle I live. And I think another thing going back to when it comes to, you mentioned you continue to do your date nights and prep, Paul. I think it is, if you can continue like as much normalcy as possible in prep, obviously within reason. I think it also makes that post show experience a lot easier, because I think a lot of times we as competitors deal with, friends or family or coworkers being like, oh my God, I can't wait until you compete, or you compete and then you're done. And then we can go out and celebrate with food, or we can,
Mhm.
finally go back to doing what we were doing before, going out to eat. So it's almost like if you go throughout your entire prep and you don't partake in that stuff, after you compete, there's probably going to be this big, like, craze of people wanting to take you out to eat and do all this stuff that you've kind of secluded yourself from for the past 6 months. So in hindsight, if you can kind of try to at least maintain a little bit of normalcy in your prep, I mean, I always say, be selfish with your energy, but also don't be a hermit. Don't be a hermit. That doesn't usually make anything easier, but it's probably going to make that transition after prep a lot easier too.
And do what makes you feel comfortable. If you don't feel like going out and being social, don't go do it, because
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
not going to be a good thing for you. But don't feel like, if you have an itch to kind of go out and hang out with some people, then go fucking do it. Like if you lose an
There is
hour
so
of
much.
sleep, if you lose an hour of sleep 7 weeks out from a show because you're going to hang out with your friends and that ruins your prep, why would anyone ever want to do this sport? Ever.
Right. And honestly,
Got to think
there's
about it like that.
so much. Yeah, there's so many activities too that you can do that are social and prep that don't require food. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of people, I feel like this is just in our society in general. There's, a lot of stigma around social events have to include food or have to include alcohol. But like, you could very well go out with friends and not drink alcohol and still have a good time. Or, you could very well hang out with a friend and propose like a coffee date instead of going out to a bar, right? Like, there's a lot of different things you can do that don't necessarily involve food and that aren't going to derail you from your prepping goals.
Yeah. It also depends. Everything in all of this depends on what your goal is, right? And if it's your first show, guys, your goal shouldn't be. I'm probably get flack for saying this. If it's your first show, I don't think your goal should be, I want to win the overall. I want to turn pro. I want to win Mr. or Miss Olympia. Go
Well, your
into it.
first show should
Learn
be
to enjoy
your
the
worst
process.
physique. You're just
It's going to be
setting
the
the
worst.
standard for yourself. So it should be your all-time worst physique. Listen, I think most of us get into competing because like there's something in us that goes, okay, I want to push my body, my
Mhm.
mind to a place where most people aren't willing to go. There's something awesome about that. And the great thing about the sport of competing is you find like-minded people.
Yep.
So when you go to your first show, when you're backstage, realize that you're all the same kind of crazy. All my, closest friends, when I got into competing, I realized that part of me had kind of been suppressed from playing baseball, and I kind of found that excitement again. So yes, prep like you're trying to win, but accept that winning does not get reflected in your effort and your dedication. There's so many outside factors, time in the gym, genetics, the standards of the sport changing. Um, you can totally have a wonderful prep and not win and really enjoy it. So, you know, and I'll say this, expectation kills more bodybuilding careers than prep or any of that stuff will. So I've seen many competitors do have an amazing prep, not win, and just be like, that's it. I literally had one competitor. I thought she was going to turn pro in our first season together. She did one show. She got second in her first novice class, ended up winning the open. It was questionable judging, but whatever. That was it. She was done. She's like, I can't even win novice. I quit. I was like, then you need to quit, because I remember the conversation on the Monday, and I said, she's like, do I have to do another show? And I said, absolutely not. This sport is not for you. If you can't appreciate how great you look, then you're just going to be very hard on yourself. She's never competed to this day. And I'll show you guys pictures when we see each other, if we remember this topic. But so competing is not for everybody. And setting that expectation, you know, I'll say this, if you're going to compete, in most situations, you're going to be the most fit, most like highly regarded person in your life. Like your family, your friends, your relatives are all going to be like, when you're not around, you're the fit person. You're the one that's so dedicated, you know. So you're going to compare yourself to Miss Olympia or Mr. Olympia. To your friends and family and people that you grew up with, you are Mr. or Miss Olympia. You're the guy or the girl. So, you know, that kind of understanding took me years to get to, right? Now I just appreciate my body for what it's capable of. I no longer go, I'm not good enough. I go, I'm pretty damn good. I've done some good things. That's helped me appreciate the sport more and have less negative impact on those around me, right? You know, sometimes that's what's hard for others about the sport. For us, when you're setting that boundary, is going, oh, I hate when Paul competes. He's such an asshole.
Right. And I find that something else that's always really helped me, and this is a conversation I have a lot with my clients, is you have to be, you know, when you're in prep or even outside of prep, you know, you have to be careful with your connotation towards certain things that are part of your protocol, right? So for example, if you're in prep and, you know, you're doing 2-a-days with cardio, rather than acting like, you know, even internally, if you are really struggling and you don't want to go and do that damn cardio, don't be like, oh, I have to go and do that cardio. Don't make it sound like this dreaded activity, you know, because if your family, if your friends hear that enough, they're going to be like, why are you prepping, right? Why are you doing this to yourself? You're just miserable. So I think it is really important, like your connotation speaks volumes, you know. No, you may not be super excited to go and do your first round of cardio, but don't act like it's the end of the world. Don't complain about it in front of, you know, those around you. You know, I always, my kind of quote I always like to say is like, you get to do prep. Like you don't have to do anything. You get to go do your cardio. You get to meal prep. You don't have to, right? So kind of, you know, even if you don't necessarily feel very enthused that day to do whatever it is, you know, be very careful with your connotation around your friends, your family, because if, you know, if you're always negative about everything you need to get done, you know, they're going to start wondering, why is she even doing this? Like, she's always miserable. She's upset. And they're not going to want to support you, right? Because they're going to think, you know, especially like parents, I know young competitors, like if a young competitor's mom sees that they're just struggling and they're, you know, they're not enjoying themselves. Well, as that moms just want their kids to be happy, right? They're going to be like, why are you doing this? This is stupid. This isn't making you happy. So regardless of if the day is tough or not, really putting on a smile and remember, you get to do this. You don't have to do it. And at the end of the day, I mean, when you look at prep in total, like you should enjoy the process. It shouldn't be miserable the whole time.
Well, I think also too, it's how you frame things. I don't think you necessarily have to enjoy the process of it. It can still be very rewarding, but you need, because a lot of things that are rewarding are not necessarily enjoyable at times, right? But the
Delayed
outcome is the
gratification.
rewarding part.
It's
Delayed gratification.
Yeah.
And understanding that and just being aware of how you are not the only person in this universe. And just be conscious of that. If you will remember that and think about that and realize, hey, I feel terrible. Everyone else here around me doesn't.
I think
Maybe
that
helps a
comes
lot.
down to like a lot of personality. I've always, you know, later in life, I've realized I'm always paying attention to how people feel around me. If I'm at a restaurant with my kids, I'm worried about the table next to us, right? If I'm at a bodybuilding show, I'm worried about the person sitting next to me. Like I've always had this weird, like I'm very concerned about how people around me are feeling. So for that reason, I think when I'm in prep, I really try to not negatively impact, I don't want my kids to be like, my rule with prep last year was if my kids offered me something to eat, I had to say yes. I don't ever want to get to a point where they're like, oh, dad doesn't eat that because it's bad for you. I might, it's like Cheetos or something I don't want. I might just be like, yeah, I want that. And I'd go throw it away. But, for the most part, I'm trying to set an example. That's the one great thing. I have the treadmill at my house. Like, so that time that I want to commit to something, I don't want that to impact them negatively. I don't want them to be like, oh, to my wife or my kids, dad's doing a bodybuilding show, so we won't see him because he's got to do the cardio, he's got to do the posing, whatever. So if you can think about how to structure your day and your routine so that you're not negatively impacting others, that's going to go a long way. And but again, that probably comes down to, do you actually love the sport of bodybuilding? I think we live in an era where a lot of people love the sport of bodybuilding because of the short-term attention. They don't want to do it for 15, 20, 30 years. They just wanted to do it because they thought nothing wrong with that. But, one thing, because I've been around the sport a long time. I'm 48 now. And people are like, oh, are you ever going to do a show? You're goddamn right. I can't wait to do another show. It's going to be a couple years. But for me, I don't know that I'm ever going to stop competing, because I just love figuring out the solution to, okay, how am I going to prep under this environment? I wouldn't even know what to do if, like, when my kids are moved out and like Misty's playing tennis 4 days a week and I can just do whatever the hell I want. Like, I don't even know. That's going to be a very,
You'd be so bored.
I'm so used to worrying about my clients and my kids and, the company. Like, yeah, I don't know how I would prep. And then, like, when I think back to my first prep when I was 32, like, the biggest concession I had to make was not going out drinking with my friends, not playing softball 3 nights a week, right? Like, those were the concessions I had to make. Like, nobody in the softball league was like, oh no, Paul's not coming.
Well, something like to kind of caveat on that, when you mentioned the not going out for drinks, I do want to mention, because I think that younger competitors are oftentimes a little fearful of, like, if you're younger, usually that crowd is more into like, oh, let's go out, let's get drinks, right? And so I can kind of speak from it from a standpoint of, I did my first prep in my dorm room, and obviously dorm culture, that like college culture is just, a lot of partying, a lot of drinks. And and I didn't really struggle with it though, because I was just, that was not me. That was not my personality. I've never been somebody who likes to like go out and go crazy. But I was very confident about that decision, right? I didn't care what other people thought about me. I was really confident in the fact that, like, no, going out and getting drinks, to me, that's not what makes me happy. That's not what's enjoyable. You can go and do that, and that's fine. And I'm not going to judge you. But because I was really firm and very confident in that, I found that people just questioned it less, right? So I think, if you can be confident in your decisions and not be kind of like, feel bad for it, or not, want to hide because, oh, I don't like to go out and drink. And like, you have to be confident in your decisions. And I found that by doing that, just less people question you. They just know, oh, Lexi doesn't really go out and do that. We're not going to question her. That's what she likes doing, right? So you have to kind of be confident too in the decisions that you're making, even if they do differ from what most people around you are doing.
I think it's, and this kind of just develops everything we're talking about here, is just don't be so dependent on an outcome with it. Do everything you can do with it. But if you go out and you're worried about like what people might say if you don't drink or something like that, you're worried about an outcome that if you're being your authentic self with it, it really shouldn't matter, right? When it comes to that. And if those people don't understand that, then they probably aren't the right people in your life for this time. And that's okay too. That's
Yeah,
okay
I
too.
will say this. If you decide, okay, I'm going to do a bodybuilding show, I guarantee your circle is going to shift a little one way or the other. Um, there's definitely going to be some friends in your life that are situational friends. And if you're not at the bars or you're not doing the things that you were doing, and then you're going to run into people that just fit your current vibe more. I think, that's one thing about like moving through this life. You don't realize, I can look back on great fondness on certain people that were like my training partner for like 2 or 3 years. I didn't know at the time that we were going to go off, get married, move, have kids. Like, for those 2 or 3 years, that was kind of paradise. And you don't enjoy it at the time because you think it's permanent. You don't think it's temporary. So understand that a lot of the things that you're doing with competing, and, you bump into somebody at the gym, really, really, like, soak that up, because even just being backstage at shows and things like that, it's so fleeting. And I look back at that now and I go, man, that was a really good period of my life that I had no idea how good I had it. And I
Mhm.
look back now and go, man, there was a last workout with my buddy Adam, who was my training partner in Orlando for a couple of years. There was a last workout with my buddy Sean that I didn't know that was my last workout with him, right? You know, so now I appreciate that stuff much more because I go, yeah, these are great periods of life. And it's not that the people in my life at that time were not great people, but my kind of center shifted, right? Like my
Mhm.
focus shifted. And so you just learn that through that there may be a shift. And you know, you know, for me at 32, I'm a much different person now, 16 years later. And bodybuilding taught me a lot about confidence in myself, saying no. You know, Alexa, you're kind of an old soul, right? I did not have that
Yeah.
confidence when I was young to say necessarily no
I didn't.
until my 30s
Well,
to get to that point.
you know, it's funny because I can sit here and self-reflect. And I mean, you guys didn't know me in high school, but I was very like just growing
We
like
would
before I
both
moved
be
to
in
Florida.
jail if we knew you in high school.
I was I was very, very shy growing up. So like all the way up until I moved to Florida for college, I was super shy. I was kind of like that girl in high school. Everybody liked me because I was nice, but I was just very quiet. I was very quiet. I didn't really speak up. And I truthfully feel like I have bodybuilding. And I think part of it is just like moving to a state where you don't know anybody and like that forces you to grow up. But bodybuilding has really allowed me to become a lot more just like confident and okay with saying no and okay with like being different and not caring about it, right? Like, so I feel like that is something that bodybuilding has absolutely instilled from me because I am a drastically different person now than I was, you know, before I moved here.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think that's the, you know, the correlation that I make with bodybuilding is that, you know, when people will, oh, bodybuilding, it's so much dedication. And is it healthy? And they have these like reservations. And I'm like, yeah, it's not for you then. My life is 1,000 times better since I did a bodybuilding show,
Mhm.
like on so many levels. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a short period of your life, but it really does teach you, okay, so no one's going to make your meals for you. No one's going to get up and do your cardio for you. No one's going to practice your posing. No one's going to get that extra rep for you. No one's going to be the person that's like over your shoulder. You're 45 minutes into a 60-minute cardio session and you want to quit. No one's going to tell you you can't quit. That's
Mhm.
going to be your internal voice. And guess what? Next time you got a project that's due that's hard, or next time, you know, something comes up where you got to work a few extra hours or your relationship gets tough, that voice that tells you not to quit is going to be the same voice that tells you not to quit in those situations. And so
Mhm.
it really just becomes um, you empowering yourself. And
Yeah.
there's a reason why there's so many successful people that we know that are competitive bodybuilders.
Bodybuilding can do one of two things. It can either propel you in a good way or in a negative way
Yeah.
with things. And especially right when it comes to the mental side of things with it. And like we're talking about like being self-aware with that and being able to handle your emotions in prep. That translates into a lot of other things, translates into relationships, translates into your business life. So when things get hard, you don't emotionally react to it. You sit with it, you understand it, and you move past it with it. And you try to come to a resolution with it because you know you have a goal in mind with
Yeah.
that. And I think it can be really, 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 really helpful with that. Again,
Well, and
if you want it to be.
it taught me the power of saying no and how that's not necessarily going to offend anybody. You know, my first prep at 32, the really, like I said, the hardest thing for me was going, well, I'm not going to drink for the next 6 months, but I still continued to go be social with my friends. I would just get like a 0 sugar Red Bull at the bar, or I would get a drink with just ice and water just so I could be social. And you guys know last year I said, I'm not going to drink alcohol for an entire year. Listen, I'm like this weekend in Salt Lake, I'm going to have a margarita after the show to celebrate, or, you know, like that's something that I truly enjoy doing. But I just felt like, okay, I'm going to set this boundary for an entire year. And it was wonderful. But yeah, I still wanted to drink again after that. So I think what bodybuilding taught me was that, like, if I have a feeling, I'm just going to go with it. And,
Mhm.
you know, the people around me will support it or they won't, but it'll be, it'll be, it'll make me happy. Yeah. And I don't think anybody gets too annoyed when you decide not to drink or not to have the dessert or not to, you know, eat an entire pizza with them. You know, I think that's something that we think is going to happen, but no one actually cares what you eat or what you drink, right?
I would hope they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some
and if
do.
they
Some people do,
do,
but
that's
that's
Well, that might
the
be a
way
little
I
bit of narcissism of
yeah.
someone that's in your
yeah.
life that's like, oh, okay, maybe they're trying to derail me, or, you know, yeah.
The way I like to look at it is, okay, well, if I'm choosing not to eat a slice of pizza, or if I'm choosing not to have a drink, how does that, like, you know, and even asking the person, how does that make me a worse friend or a worse significant other? Like, truly, by me saying no to the pizza or me saying no
Right.
to a drink, how does that make me a worse friend? It doesn't, right?
Well,
And when you can kind of frame it like that, I mean, it usually, if people are going to give you crap for that stuff, it's more of just a reflection of something internally going on with
yeah.
them. Um,
They're
but
projecting
yeah,
their
you
insecurities on you and their needs. And that's well, when you study psychology of people and kind of how people act on things, it has nothing to do with you. You're just bringing out that insecurity in them. And, you know, that's not, you can't do anything about that. You're not looking at them saying, oh, you're bad for eating that. You like, seriously, eat it. Doesn't matter to me. But they feel better if like, well, it's like misery enjoys company, right? But that's not a miserable thing. But it's like, hey, I'm doing this, you're doing it too. So that makes me feel good about doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
right, yeah. Well, I think
But
another thing
you're,
we should
go
what?
ahead. I was going to say, you can be
Oh,
a reflection of the things that they're not doing. So sometimes,
Yes.
you know,
yes,
like, don't go to the
yes.
gym and do cardio. I remember, you know, when I was young, I got into a relationship, and, you know, the girl was like, why do you go to the gym? You're already in shape. Is the gym more important than me? I was like,
Hmm.
Uh,
you know, and young, dumb Paul is like, yeah, okay, I'm going to spend time with you. And then, you know, 6 months later, you're like, why did I do that?
why? Well, I think we should touch on before we forget boundary setting when it comes to social media as well, because I know we talked about how we wanted to hit on that side of things. Because I think that's a you know that's the boundary that some people have to set with themselves too. Some people, you know, when they're prepping or deep into prep, I've known some people that will like just log out of social media for a week or two just because they need that personal
I know
piece.
people
So,
that
I
delete the app off their phone. They'll delete TikTok and
yeah,
Instagram and whatever they're using to like drive themselves crazy.
I'll
and I think I've never deleted anything. I mean, obviously, I don't want to because part of social media is like it's helpful for work. But what I do always recommend, like my competitors, to do is filter your social media, you know, from time to time. Go through and you know what, if you're following somebody who they could be the nicest person in the world, but if their posts, you know, make you feel a certain way or just, you know, elicit a little bit of negativity, just mute them. You don't have to necessarily unfollow them if you don't want to, but mute them. That way, you know, you can get on social media, and by the time you get off social media, you should feel, I mean, I would hope you feel happy and encouraged. Like it's up to you. You get to filter your social media, right? So if you're finding that you get off social media and you just feel negative about yourself, you know, you're falling into the comparison trap, probably best for you to filter who you're following. That way you don't feel that way upon getting off social media.
yeah, and I think a big one too is, and I know we've talked about this in the past, and this is a big issue. I don't think I've had a newer competitor that's not done this, that says, hey, I looked at pictures from the show from last year and I think this. Um, Nothing good is going to come out of that. Nothing good. Because especially if you look at me like, oh, I'm going to beat that. Right. And we all know pictures don't tell the whole story on things. And so one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to show up
Especially
and that's going to be
stage
correct.
pictures.
Oh, I
They're the
know.
worst.
Or you're going to show up and you're going to not win, which is going to be even a bigger shot to your confidence with that.
Right.
So no, literally zero good can come of that, because chances are those people are not going to be there.
No.
Looking at it does no good. And bodybuilding is the biggest part. If you're doing bodybuilding and you are not at a top level, if your goal is to go in and win everything, that should obviously be your goal, is to go in and do that because you're working hard for it. But don't hang your hat on and say, hey, this is unsuccessful if I don't get this either.
Yeah.
Go for it and fight like hell to be the best you can with that. But also understand, like I was talking about this to a client the other day. At Universe, like or a couple of years ago, I lost to a guy that had been training for 6 months. You know how much that sucked? Like I've been doing this for a while, and I lost to a guy that started working out 6 months ago. You cannot worry about that stuff.
Right.
Sometimes things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And setting those boundaries and understanding kind of what triggers you, because that's everything for different people. Some people could be competitors, some people could be food, right?
Yeah.
That's a big one for a lot of people. Some people can be like the social events. They feel like they're missing out, that they like to go out with their friends, and they see these people out of their clubs and stuff like, and it really messes with them. It'll
Yeah,
mess their
FOMO.
sleep up. Yep. It's a real
My
thing.
favorite, my favorite now is JOMO, the joy of missing out.
That's a good one.
Like, yeah.
I
So I
like
think, yeah,
that.
social media, I think we all go through phases with it. And a couple of years ago, I realized I was following every coach, every competitor, and I would get in my own head, like, my clients aren't doing good enough. And then I realized one day, I was like, man, I'm really doing a lot of negative self-talk. And it's because I would scroll through. So I'll be honest, I don't really follow any competitor that I'm not coaching. I just don't follow them anymore. And it's because I want to go on my feed and see my friends, my family, my, clients comment and get off. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of seeing, people that I have no involvement with, because it really doesn't set me up. And it's taken me a while to get to that point where, like, I'm showing up at these shows. I haven't seen a single post from the girls that I mentioned outside of my, Ariel's making her pro debut, Shanika, Carrie, and Brittany. I have not gone on any of these other little pages. And, but, sometimes people say, hey, so-and-so's looking good. I'm like, great. Okay. But I know the standard of the sport. I know how my girls are going to show up. You can worry about me. I am not worried about you. I'm worried about my athlete looking the best they can look on that day. And then it's up to the judges. It's not up to my stress. So, I think the biggest boundaries to set with yourself are knowing yourself well enough to know, can you go on a social media platform and get on there and not come off and be in a worse place mentally? That's a slippery slope, right? So, I just deleted TikTok off my phone because it's great entertainment. And when I say great, I mean, it's so good that I would get on there and just scroll for, like, I would look at things and they're funny videos and they're, cops chasing people and something fun. And next thing I know, like 20 minutes has gone by. I'm like, what did I just do? Like, what? So I actually deleted it.
I hear so many people say that about TikTok. I have TikTok, but I've just never really given it the time of day. But I've heard so many people say it is the easiest rabbit hole to just fall down.
I've heard people that are young, old, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's because the content is so clever and so creative. And so, like, I guess the way the algorithm works, like, if I see a video that I like and I watch it for longer, I get more of that content. So it makes sense that's how it's driven based on that. Versus, I feel with, like, the YouTube and Instagram, I can much more control what I'm seeing because you don't have to scroll through. I can, kind of, yeah. So I've just, maybe I'll get back on there one day, but for now, I just don't feel like TikTok adds any value to me. Whereas I still like to focus on YouTube and Instagram. So maybe there's something people can do. I think we're always worried about the next platform.
Yeah.
But we're also going through this era where, like, these giant platforms were created. They are now the gorillas. I don't know that there's going to be a next Instagram or a next Facebook. There hasn't been one in a while, right? For a while there, it was constantly something new. Yeah, I haven't found TikTok to be as community friendly and as beneficial for me.
The TikTok thing is, and the reason I never got into it, and it's gonna make me, like, I don't know what it's gonna make me sound like, but I think there is a big disservice we do to our attention span and our brain when we get locked into these really short form content with that. It's like a lot of people get their news off TikTok. I'm like, how much actual context can you get in a short period of time? Almost none.
Yeah.
Almost none.
And that's why when,
context.
I've even talked to my video editor, George, about, YouTube shorts. And what I notice is a lot of these channels that are posting YouTube shorts, which are like videos under a minute, really focused for the phone, their channels grow subscribers, but their views do not grow, right? So they're getting people that are more interested in entertainment, not people that are actually interested in value, right? And now I'm noticing my YouTube channel has been growing very rapidly, and we're focusing on the 10-minute, 15-minute in-depth videos. So I think, I think there's two, like, the short form content is more entertainment based, but people that really want to dig in and learn, they're going to take the time to choose what they're watching more.
That's it. Everyone knows the price of something, but no one knows the value, right? And that's the same thing with all of this. And there is a big difference between entertainment and value. Like, providing value for something and providing entertainment is two very, it doesn't have to be different. And that's why I think YouTube can be so good, is because it can give you value and entertainment at the same time in a little bit longer form.
So so this is probably a little off topic now, but so my Google Analytics, which is like the back end of YouTube, if you're a content creator, gives you all this data. And it popped up a question the other day. It said, what percentage of your viewers are watching YouTube on a television? So not your phone, not your computer, but an actual TV on the wall. So what percentage would you say for my channel?
Probably 20%, 15.
Lexi?
Yeah, I'd say 15, because I feel like YouTube's a lot
high.
more of like a passive thing though. Like I feel like a lot of people watch it more on their phone, like when they're doing cardio. So I'd say 15%.
Right. And I would have totally agreed with you. 40%.
Yeah.
So
Really?
people are not, because think about the TVs now. When you
People
turn
watch
it
Yeah.
on
on,
TV.
they don't have channels. They have Hulu,
Uh-huh.
Yes.
YouTube, Netflix, Paramount, whatever, the Disney. So my kids, every time the TV comes on, they scroll over to YouTube and they're watching, Mr. Beast, or they're watching like a fishing vlogs or dinosaur video, whatever it is that they're into, they're going to YouTube for that. That's happening now in our space too. So I think
Yes.
understanding that, it's
That's-
made me think like I need to create really high quality videos, because
I went to see my dad on Sunday. I drove down to Tampa. We went to lunch, and my dad's almost 70. And we sat there on the couch and he was watching YouTube on the TV. That is my dad, who's almost 70.
So think about, I
That's
don't think
literally
people
what people
realize
do.
that that's happening now. People our age and older are using the television to dial into YouTube. So when I heard that, it made me feel good about the direction that, because, George and I had this conversation a while back, like focusing more on the short form content, but every channel that I see do that, I notice their long form content dwindles, right? Their subscribers go up, but their views go down, which, think about that. Like, you're getting more people clicking subscribe, but you're getting less people watching your actual videos.
Which negatively impacts your CPM if you're worried about payment on that. Because look,
to me, it's not about the money. To me, it's about keeping the audience. You don't want people subscribing that actually don't give a crap about your information.
No, it hurts your numbers. It's not a good thing.
Concept of people on Instagram who buy a ton of followers, right? They have a really impressive following number, but their engagement on their reels, on their posts is super low, and it just looks weird.
Well, and even if it looks like they have good engagement, go click on those accounts, and they're bot accounts.
Bot accounts.
Yep. Yeah. Or you see all the comments that are like, send post too, or all the robots.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, any other things you guys want to hit on when it comes to the topic of boundaries? Anything we didn't touch on?
Well, I'm going to set a boundary because it's almost 11:30. I've really got to go to the bathroom, and I need to go to the gym at 12. So I think we should end it here, guys.
Let's do it.
A great example. Paul setting boundaries. I love it. And I would say go say hi to Paul if you're at Salt Lake City this weekend, but this will be out on Monday. So he will be
this
gone.
will be out Monday. So it'll be fun. So let's make, I think we kind of already made a prediction. I'm going to say it's going to be Brittany and Amy fighting for the win. I think, Casey's just such a wild card in there, wild card.
I have her up there. I think she's definitely going to be in first call outs.
Okay.
But I could see,
fair.
I think she'll be in first call outs, but yeah, I think Brittany, Amy, Casey, I potentially see Maya being up there. I know she got good feedback last show.
Kimber Bonilla did good her first show, not as good her second, so she could figure it out.
Who's judging, Paul?
Steve DeVore.
Okay. Malou,
if it was
I
Tyler,
think Malou.
If it's Tyler,
oh yeah, Malou for
top three.
sure. I think Chantel, if she's as good as she can be, if she's on, she'll be in that first call out. So it'll be curious because we kind of nailed it with the clash. We said we thought who would win, and we thought Allie could be the dark horse, and she ended up winning. So
I think the three most comparable, it'll be Brittany, Amy, and if Jessica can nail it, I think they're all comparable.
I still think that Noelle, I've seen her. She's just, she's just eye catching. And I think in a show of this size, that's gonna
matter.
So
it's gonna matter.
Yeah.
And I think, if Amy is going to be the standard, it's kind of what basis goes off that at this show, which it would be my guess. And I don't know how Steve judges that well, so I can't really, that's why I asked.
Yep. He judges to the standard as he would say.
As they do.
All right, guys. Well, I think that'll end it, and it'll be exciting recap next week to go over the results of this and it'll probably be too soon to preview. Oh, it'll be preview girl power. The list will be out.
Yes.
Yes, it
All
will
right.
be.
Awesome.
All right.
All right,
You
bye,
guys.
See y'all.